everybody, and welcome to another Top 5 board gaming video. Today we've got something very special where we're going to be talking about something that we all really need, especially this time of year, because everything gets so serious and we're seeing our families and they're driving us insane and they're saying, why don't you have a job? Why don't you have a girlfriend? All that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about something that is fun and exciting and different and unique. We're going to be talking about games that are satirical. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is essentially games that are making fun of either themselves, their source material, other games that are similar to them, or anything along those lines. Just games that are designed for fun, right? Now, some of these games are really blatant and obvious in the way that they present their satire, and others are a little bit more subtle. And I hope that you enjoy them. As always, please let me know in the comments below what you guys think of not only these games, but also what other games you know of and love that are satirical in nature for themselves as well. But with that, we are going to go ahead and get started with my number 5. At number 5, I've got a game that is not so much satirical in its nature, but it's more about how it sort of pokes fun at other games that are similar to it, because this is a game where it's designed as a party game, it's supposed to be all this kind of fun stuff and yada yada yada, but in the end it's just gruesome and horrible and an absolutely terrible game for terrible people. If you don't know yet that the game itself is Cards Against Humanity, then you are probably on the wrong channel. That said, my number 5, Cards Against Humanity. The fact is that this game is tremendously, ridiculously fun and hilarious, more often than not. This is a game where, in my experience, it tends to be very polarizing, though. It really depends on the people with whom you're playing, how well you know them, how ridiculous it is, and frankly, how many adult beverages you have imbibed, because it does tend to get a lot more fun that way. Either way, in the end, this is a satirical game. That is the whole point. It's a satire on a lot of party games, like I said, things like Apples to Apples, or even more modern ones like Concept or Wits and Wagers and things like that. But Apples to Apples being the most obvious one. And the fact is that it's just designed to be horrible. That's really what it boils down to. It takes the source material, which is real life, and it just like twists it and writhes it and makes it an awful thing. But it is hilarious. And on top of that, there's a ton of expansions that are specific for all sorts of different well, everything pretty much. They've got regular expansions, and then they've got themed expansions where they've got the 90s, I believe they have the 80s, they have a science one, they have all sorts of different ones. It's absolutely insane. That said, I also have a super fun sort of bonus thing where there's a game that is similar to Cards Against Humanity in terms of satire, and it's probably more satirical, but Cards Against Humanity is more well known. The other game that I have is Joking Hazard. If you guys are not aware of this game, essentially this is a Kickstarter game. I received it not too long ago, and it's based off of Cyanide and Happiness. If you guys have ever read Cyanide and Happiness, then you know how ridiculously crazy this game is. The way that it's played is very similar to other games of this sort, where you have a starting point and then you are creating an end point. So in this case, you have 2 panels of a comic, and everybody is trying to fill out the third panel with something absolutely ridiculous and or hilarious. So again, as far as actual pure satiricalness is concerned, Joking Hazard wins it by a long shot between these two, but simply because not only did it just recently come off of Kickstarter, and it's completely unavailable to the public as of right now, so Cards Against Humanity is more well known. I mean, Cards Against Humanity, in my opinion, also tends to be a little bit more hilarious, because for Joking Hazard, it really helps if you're familiar with Cyanide and Happiness. But that said, Cards Against Humanity is my number 5. At number 4, I've got a game that is really more satire for me personally, but at the same time is a really fun game, and I highly recommend that you guys give it a try if you get a chance. The game itself is Nefarious, the Mad Scientist game. So again, for me personally, this is satire because I am a scientist, and this is a satire on what I do. You pretty much have every single movie and TV show cliche about mad scientists in this. So you are trying to essentially hold the world ransom them so that you can get the most money out of them, and you're trying to scare the most people. So it's a competitive building, like doomsday device building game, essentially. You've got a dash of espionage where you're stealing information and cards, in this case, from the other players. You're trying to build up your own stuff, perform research to do it, all that kind of stuff. So it really twists the whole like scientific method and actual reality of science, which one would expect from a game like the Mad Scientist game. That said, what really sums up the satirical aspect for me personally is one of the quotes on the back of the box, and I'll just read it to you here. Always remember, any meaningful contribution to humanity will only result in you being laughed at. You will show them. You'll show them all. And like, come on! I mean, that is just like the perfect summation of how this is satirical ridiculousness to actual science. And again, that's why for me personally, this is a satirical game. For others, this is just a thematic game about science. And it's like sort of twisted science. But either way, Nefarious is my number 4. At number 3, I've got a game that takes pretty much every single genre of gaming and fandom and everything else, twists it on its head, and just mocks it incessantly. This is actually a card game I've talked about many, many times, and it is Munchkin. That's right. Not only do we have Munchkin the card game, but we also have Munchkin Quest, the board game, as well. For now, I'm just going to talk about the card game mostly because the card game is more expansive. We're talking about more different types of things, because we've got westerns with the good, the bad, and the Munchkin. We've got sci-fi with Star Munchkin. We've got like the ridiculous overdone kung fu movies with Munchkin Fu. We've got Munchkin Booty, which is about pirates. All sorts of craziness. It's absolutely ridiculous, and there's even more and more coming out now. There's even like Munchkin Pathfinder, there's Munchkin Cthulhu. I could go on and on and on. For those of you who aren't aware, the entire premise of Munchkin is exactly what I described earlier. Originally, the first game was designed around things like D&D. So you're talking about adventuring, you're talking about getting loot and treasure and defeating monsters and that kind of thing. But it just makes it ridiculous. It makes the whole thing silly. And that's why it's so great. That's why it's so hilarious, because really it enables gamers as an entire community to laugh at their interests. And it's absolutely great, and it does it amazingly well. Now, this is one of the games where I mentioned at the beginning of this video that does the satire pretty blatantly. It's like really on the surface of it, but at the same time, the illustrations are hilarious, the jokes are ridiculously hilarious, and overall, it's just a fun game to play. It is rather luck-based, but at the same time, if you're talking about playing a game like this, you're playing it for the humor. And for all those reasons, Munchkin is my number 3. At number 2, I've got a game that was designed to make some very, very silly ridiculousness out of an extremely serious and hostile situation. The very hostile situation was the Cold War and the very, very real threat of nuclear annihilation. The game is Nuclear War. This originally came out in 1965, and it recently celebrated its 50th anniversary, and that's what I got right here. So I don't know if you can read it, but this is the 50th anniversary edition of this game. I got it off of Kickstarter, and that's the only reason I own it. It's difficult to get the original one, but effectively the entire point of this game is that you are trying to destroy all of your best friends and kill off all of their population in their little tableau thing that they've got going on. You are literally launching nuclear weapons at one another and sending like out propaganda films and things to force their people to leave and join yours and all this kind of stuff. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's completely insane. But again, this was really designed as a sort of stress reliever, if nothing else, for a very tumultuous time in the world's history. Not even just that of the US and Russia, but the entire world was really at stake during the Cold War. And this game was, again, it was designed as something silly to take people's minds off of it by just making a fun, wacky, weird thing. Effectively sort of like a political cartoon, where it takes a very serious infraction or a very serious issue and turns it into something funny for the public to deal with and have something to do with it. So realistically, there are very, very few things that I can think that are more satirical than that. It is pretty much the definition of satire. That is why this game was designed. That is what it exists for. So I can think of very few things that are much better than this, but that is why Nuclear War is my number 2. At number 1, I've got a game that is designed to be ridiculously silly, satirical nonsense. The problem is, the nature of this game makes people assume that it's not actually satirical. And in a way, that is the most satirical thing that is possible. It is like satirical-ception. That's a new word that I just invented. The game itself is Illuminati. So the idea behind this game is that you are controlling one of the famous Illuminati powers, whether it's the Bavarian Illuminati or the Gnomes of Zurich or the Church of the Subgenius, whatever it happens to be, and you are trying to control different aspects of the planet. Now, we are talking about large government organizations like the IRS, and ranging all the way down to like goldfish aficionados. I mean, just a ridiculous spread of all sorts of different things. You've got extremely powerful cards like the FBI and the CIA, and then you've got extremely weak and lame cards like the Post Office. Yes, the Post Office is very weak and lame in this game. And that's one of the most hilarious things about it, is the way that they sort of capture the essence of the individual cards and what they do and what they indicate. But again, the funniest thing about this is the fact that it's called Illuminati, and if you think about conspiracy theories and this kind of stuff, then people will point to a game like this and say, look, this is proof that the Illuminati exists. There's a game about it. And again, that just makes it so ridiculous, and the satirical-ception and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember if that's the same word as I said last time, but I really don't care. Either way, this is a really fun game. It does take a while to play. It takes a while to learn. If you're interested, I did do a review and gameplay demo on this. It was one of the first ones that I did. You can feel free to go and watch it. You can check out the link. But again, it's another Steve Jackson game, just like with Munchkin. So a large part of this game is the humor aspect. We are talking about something that is designed to make fun of things. Now, a lot of the humor in this is a bit more tongue-in-cheek rather than with Munchkin, where it's very like in your face, on the nose type of thing. But at the same time, if you can appreciate the humor, this game is absolutely hilarious. It's also tremendously fun and very, very deeply strategic. So I highly recommend that you try it out if you have not been able to do so yet. But regardless, Illuminati, my number 1 satirical game. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. Once again, I do hope that you enjoyed this video, my top 5 favorite satirical board games. Again, this is meant to be fun and exciting and weird and wacky, because 2016 has been terrible for everything and everyone. So I just wanted to try to lighten the mood up for you guys and all this kind of thing. But once again, do make sure that you put in the comments below anything and everything that you guys want about this category. What do you guys think of the category? What do you think about this sort of more subtle or unique type of humor? What games do you think would fit well into this category? What do you think of the games that I personally picked? All that kind of stuff. You guys know I love hearing from you. I love reading and responding to your comments and just having those little conversations and everything. But with that, thank you so very much for watching. I hope again that you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.